Climate change may be killing baobab trees. This magnificent plant is the baobab tree. Different species of these trees can be found across Africa, Australia, and the Middle East. They can live for thousands of years, grow up to 30 meters tall, and even 20 meters in diameter. Sadly, though, new research has revealed that some of them are suddenly dying. Writing in a new study in the journal Nature Plants, researchers detail how they tracked some of these trees using radiocarbon dating since 2000. According to Popular Science, the researchers looked at 60 trees in total. Their findings report that 9 of 13 oldest trees have begun to perish, as have 5 of 6 larger ones. The deaths just began occurring in the last 12 years, and scientists don't know particularly why. But they do have a guess, and it's the usual suspect: climate change. Speaking to the Los Angeles Times via email, lead author Adrian Partut explained the trees are used to drier and colder conditions, but possibly not to hotter conditions. Partut told the Times he and researchers suspect that the combination of temperature increase and extreme drought stress were responsible for these demises. Climate change, the fight for the planet.
Pretty soon, some sharks will have a Napoleon complex. Damn it, climate change! Climate change may actually be altering the size of the planet's fish. A recent study published in the journal Global Change Biology suggests that rising temperatures in oceans might be shrinking fish. Warmer waters mean less oxygen, something fish need to grow into adulthood. Fish use their gills to breathe underwater. From an evolutionary perspective, less oxygen would see gills adapting to warmer waters by becoming smaller. Researchers found that warming oceans may cause fish such as tuna and trout to shrink by around 30% and 8% respectively. They estimate that worldwide this trend could reduce the amount of fish that can be caught for food by 30%. But hey, at least on the positive side, you might soon be able to put a pet shark in a fish bowl. Eating beans over meat could save the planet. A new study shows Americans should probably eat more beans than meat if the country wants to meet its emissions target. Cows emit methane due to a digestive process known as enteric fermentation. Most of the methane is released through belching, and only a small percentage is produced through flatulence. The massive amount of greenhouse gas produced by cows is comparable to the pollution produced by cars. Growing pulses is greatly beneficial to the environment, as they are able to directly draw nitrogen from the atmosphere and convert it into nutrients. This means a reduction in the amount of fossil fuels used to produce nitrogen to create these nutrients. It is also much more water efficient to grow pulses than to raise cattle. Beans also provide similar nutrients to the human body as beef, without the increased risk of developing type 2 diabetes, stroke, and colorectal cancer. Research shows changing the population's diet from beef to beans could help the U.S. meet its emissions target by 2020. Another study published in April recommended substituting meat with crickets and mealworms in order to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Would you give up your juicy steaks for beans and worms?
It's not the Guinness. Many of Ireland's bees might be on their way out. According to the Irish Times, 1/3 of Ireland's 98 bumblebee species are facing extinction. The Irish Mirror reports that 21 species of bees are crucial to the environment as they provide pollination for crops and flowers. The findings were procured from data going back 6 years that looks at 100 sites with 8 of the most common bumblebees. According to the Irish Times, the bee population lowered at a rate of 3.7% per year since 2012. An ecologist told the Irish Mirror that prior to 1960, rare species like the great yellow bumblebee, red-shanked carder bee, and shrill carder bee used to be present across Ireland. Now they're found only on the Irish west coast. Reasons for the dwindling bee population, according to the Irish Mirror, are habitat loss, pesticides, climate change, and starvation brought about by decline in wildflowers.
Another catastrophe caused by climate change. Japan's coral reefs are in danger. According to a government study, rising sea temperatures have impacted the ability of Japan's biggest coral reef to recover from bleaching, resulting in only 1% of the reef being in good health. Due to rising sea temperature, the reef has suffered bleaching events in 1998, 2001, 2007, and 2016, leading to a decrease in the overall coral volume by nearly 80% in the Tsukise Lagoon. A Japanese ministry official said that the loss of rich animal life under the sea would have a grave impact on the ecosystem in the region. The lagoon is approximately 67.89 square kilometers, with only around 1.4% of its corals healthy. According to scientists, it takes at least 10 to 20 years for coral to recover from a bleaching event. Coral reefs are home to 25% of sea life, even though they only make up 1% of marine environment. The only way for the coral to recover is if sea temperatures drop and algae are able to recolonize them again.
The state of the climate is dismal. A report from the U.S.'s National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration confirmed that 2016 was a year of extreme heat, surpassing 2015 as the warmest year since records began 137 years ago. A strong El Niño coupled with long-term global warming led to land and sea surface temperatures reaching unprecedented heights in 2016, making it the hottest year on record. The planet's greenhouse gas emissions likewise went up, with carbon dioxide concentrations increasing to more than 400 parts per million for the first time ever. Global sea levels are at their highest, at 3.25 inches more than the 1993 average. The past 2 decades have seen sea levels go up at an average of 0.13 inches annually, with the Western Pacific and Indian Oceans showing the highest rates of increase. Water and precipitation cycles exhibited extremes, with droughts plaguing parts of Africa and South America. Other areas, meanwhile, were beset by floods and tropical cyclones, which in 2016 numbered 93. The report's findings emphasize that the symptoms of climate change show no sign of slowing and will likely intensify unless major changes are made. But with recent blows to efforts combating climate change, including the Trump administration pulling out of the Paris Agreement, it seems we'll see more record-breaking weather in the years to come. Asia's glaciers are shrinking. With Asian glaciers facing a massive melt by the end of the century, millions of people are at risk of water shortages, and it's all thanks to global warming. The high mountains of Asia lie in a region surrounding the Tibetan Plateau and contains the largest store of permanent ice outside the North and South Poles. Meltwater feeds into major rivers like the Indus, Yangtze, and Mekong, and are used for drinking, hydroelectric power, and irrigation. Scientists predict that Asian high mountain glaciers will lose a third of their mass by 2100 if the global temperature rises 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. If temperatures increase 3.5, 4, or 6 degrees, losses could reach 49, 51, and 65% respectively. Glacial loss could affect the region's water supply and lead to shortages. At the same time, accelerated melting could trigger intense flooding, especially when combined with climate change-induced heavy rains and super typhoons. High warming scenarios carry worse consequences, including massive sea level rise, floods, droughts, loss of species, and even disease. The only way to avoid such a dismal future is by minimizing global temperature rise. And for that, we need to double, even triple efforts to combat climate change.